Imagine a world where the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life forever. Now, picture Hollywood's most beloved star, Keanu Reeves, stepping into an elderly woman's garden and making an unforgettable difference. This isn't just another celebrity story, this is a tale of heart, humility, and human connection. Let's dive into how Keanu Reeves helped an elderly woman in the most heartwarming way. The Garden of Kindness, a heartwarming tale of Keanu Reeves. Introduction. An ordinary day turns extraordinary. It was a quiet and sunny afternoon in a small suburban neighborhood, where life moved at its own unhurried pace. Birds chirped in the distance, and a gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of blooming flowers. At the corner of Maple Street stood a quaint little house with a well-loved but slightly overgrown garden. This was the home of Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, an 82-year-old widow who had lived there for over 50 years. Eleanor's garden was her sanctuary. It was where she spent most of her time, tending to the flowers and remembering her late husband, George, who had built the garden for her decades ago. But as the years passed, her body grew weaker, and maintaining the garden became more challenging. Despite her struggles, Eleanor refused to give up. On this particular day, Eleanor was determined to plant a row of daisies, George's favorite flower, with her frail hands. Trembling slightly, she knelt on the ground, digging holes in the soil. She paused frequently to catch her breath, wiping beads of sweat from her brow. The afternoon sun was unrelenting, and her energy began to wane. A chance encounter. Unbeknownst to Eleanor, a movie crew had set up camp just a few blocks away. Hollywood superstar Keanu Reeves was in town, filming scenes for his latest project. Known for his humility and down-to-earth nature, Keanu often enjoyed walking around the neighborhoods where he worked, soaking in the local charm and finding moments of peace away from the limelight. As Keanu strolled along Maple Street, dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt, he noticed the small house with the overgrown garden. His attention was drawn to the elderly woman struggling to tend to her plants. She was trying to lift a heavy watering can, but it slipped from her hands and spilled water onto the ground. Concern flashed across Keanu's face. Without a second thought, he crossed the street and approached the garden gate. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called out gently, careful not to startle her. Eleanor looked up, squinting against the sunlight. At first, she didn't recognize the man standing before her. "Oh, hello there," she said, slightly embarrassed by the mess she'd made. "Are you okay?" Keanu asked, stepping closer. "Do you need some help?" Eleanor hesitated. She was used to doing things on her own and wasn't accustomed to accepting help from strangers, but something about the man's kind eyes and warm smile made her feel at ease. "Well, if it's not too much trouble," she said, "I could use a hand with this watering can." The helping hand. Keanu picked up the watering can with ease and began watering the flowers. "You've got a beautiful garden here," he remarked, glancing around at the vibrant blooms and carefully arranged flower beds. Eleanor smiled wistfully. "Thank you. My husband and I started this garden together many years ago. He passed away 10 years ago, but I've tried to keep it going in his memory." Touched by her words, Keanu knelt beside her. "That's a wonderful way to honor him," he said sincerely. "Gardens are like memories, they grow and bloom when they're cared for." Eleanor chuckled softly. "That's a poetic way of putting it. Are you a gardener yourself?" Keanu laughed, shaking his head. "Not really, but I do enjoy spending time in nature. It's one of the few things that keeps me grounded." As they talked, Keanu noticed the weeds sprouting along the edges of the garden beds and the overgrown bushes in the corner. "You know," he said, rolling up his sleeves, "I've got some free time. Why don't I help you tidy up a bit?" Eleanor blinked in surprise. "Oh, you don't have to do that. You're too kind. I insist," Keanu replied with a grin. "Besides, it looks like you've been working hard enough already." A day in the garden. For the next few hours, Keanu and Eleanor worked side by side in the garden. He pulled weeds, trimmed bushes, and even dug holes for the daisies she wanted to plant. Eleanor supervised, occasionally sharing gardening tips and stories about the garden's history. As they worked, their conversation flowed naturally. Keanu opened up about his love for simple pleasures in life, like riding motorcycles and reading books. Eleanor, in turn, shared anecdotes about her younger days and her life with George. At one point, Eleanor asked, "What brings you to this neighborhood, young man? You don't look like you're from around here." Keanu hesitated for a moment, unsure if she recognized him. "I'm here for a film shoot," he said modestly. "A film shoot?" Eleanor's eyes widened. "Are you an actor?" Keanu chuckled. "Yes, something like that." Eleanor studied him closely, and then her face lit up with recognition. "Wait a minute, you're Keanu Reeves, aren't you?" "Caught," Keanu nodded sheepishly. "Guilty as charged." Eleanor gasped. "Oh my goodness, I've seen your movies. My granddaughter loves The Matrix. What are you doing helping an old lady like me?" Keanu smiled. "I'm just lending a hand where it's needed. Besides, this is much more rewarding than being on a movie set." An unexpected gift. As the afternoon turned into evening, the garden began to transform. The weeds were gone, the flowers were watered and arranged beautifully, and the overgrown bushes were neatly trimmed. Eleanor couldn't believe her eyes. "This is incredible," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Keanu replied. "It was my pleasure." But Keanu wasn't finished yet. Before leaving, he went to his car and returned with a small box. Inside was a set of high-quality gardening tools he had recently purchased for himself. "I think these will be more useful to you than to me," he said, handing the box to Eleanor. Eleanor's hands trembled as she accepted the gift. "You're too generous, Mr. Reeves. This means so much to me." Keanu smiled and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Thompson, and keep this garden blooming." It's a beautiful reminder of love and resilience. A lasting impact. After Keanu left, Eleanor sat on her porch, looking out at her transformed garden. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming kindness she had experienced. She couldn't wait to tell her family about the Hollywood star who had stopped by to help her in the garden. The story didn't end there. Word of Keanu's good deeds spread throughout the neighborhood, and soon the local news picked it up. People were moved by his humility and willingness to help a stranger. The garden became a symbol of kindness, inspiring others in the community to lend a helping hand to those in need. As for Eleanor, she continued to care for her garden with newfound energy and hope. Every time she looked at the daisies, she thought of her husband and the unexpected friend who had reminded her that kindness still existed in the world. Conclusion. This story of Keanu Reeves helping an elderly woman in her garden is a testament to the power of simple acts of kindness. It reminds us that no matter how famous or busy we may be, there is always time to make a difference in someone's life. Just as Eleanor's garden flourished with a little help, so can our world when we choose compassion over indifference. If this story inspired you, don't forget to share it with your friends and family, and remember, a small act of kindness can go a long way.